Chinese state-run media had been publishing. Well, I guess the backstory is that the Hong Kong Affairs Office, which is like the Chinese, like it's technically a mainland Chinese office that controls Hong Kong, had, made some statement about how any officials that serve Hong Kong that get elected must be patriotic to China. And,
the oath, yeah.
Yeah, so like that was basically interpreted as they're going to start disqualifying pro-democracy district councilors, which is like, like a town council, or like, think of like the lowest level of, like, people who deal with garbage pickup and stuff like that normally.
They have very little power, but it's the only branch of the government that's always been completely
elected.
Completely elected. And technically, the district councilors have the ability to elect 117 seats on the 1,200-person seat that elects the chief executive.
If you're thinking that Hong Kong government sounds complicated, you would be right. But,
no, it's the party. It's in charge. Easy.
Okay, that part's easy. But the technicalities of how they manage to jury-rig everything is kind of complicated. But the point is, district council used to not be that important. Mostly was controlled by pro-Beijing politicians. And then in 2019, during the protests, because that was the only election people could vote in, like people voted in like almost every district except one was voted in like the pro-democracy people. So now basically they're going to try to disqualify them. And then, of course, after they made this announcement about, having to be patriotic and stuff like that, there was some backlash, from Western governments, foreign media. And so China Daily took it upon themselves to defend this by pointing out that, every other country talks about patriotism. When Barack Obama was president, he talked about how important it was to be patriotic. What's wrong with wanting Hong Kong officials to be patriotic too? It's completely the same thing.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah,
so rational.
I'm also completely fooled by that logic.
So it was like this like full page like color thing where like you scroll through and then there's quotes from UK officials and all these. It's basically trying to accuse the West of hypocrisy, right? Like, how come you can be patriotic and we can't tell our people to be patriotic?
Yes, it's amazing how they really. Who does that fool though? Who is the audience of that?
Well, I mean, I think if you're not really thinking about it critically, you're not seeing how they're twisting and warping language to suit their own political ends. So they take a word that everyone agrees is good and they change it to mean one thing for them while other people still mean a different thing. So it's the same way they handle the term human rights, is everyone universally agrees that human rights are good. And therefore, what the Communist Party does is they redefine human rights as giving people economic opportunity, lifting people out of poverty. And so now China can say, oh, look how many people we have lifted out of poverty. China has the best human rights. And they're just using the same term, but using a totally different definition for it. And I think that does actually fool a lot of people. And some people who aren't thinking deeply about the implications of it are like, oh, well, okay, it makes sense that economics could also be a human right. That's just how they look at it. But what they're not seeing is that like the deeper meaning behind it is that we, the Communist Party, are not going to give you the other human rights. We're actually using this to replace the values that you hold.
It's actually superior to the values that you hold, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for the Hong Kong thing, coming back to that, it's like China's Communist Party takes the word patriotism, which is loving your country and doing things for the sake of your country, and they're redefining that as acting in a way that is obedient to the Communist Party rather than it being a love for the actual future of the country and the people. And so, but no one's saying this, right? No one's explaining how they're warping the language. It's just that they're using the same term. And so now they're like, oh, well, Hong Kong should be patriotic because the UK says UK citizens should be patriotic and America says American citizens should be patriotic. And it all comes down to this way that the Communist Party changes language to trick people and push its own repressive agenda.
Can I just say that I'm very impressed? Maybe we should have dry pot more often before a podcast.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, that was very well explained.
Well,
I think
again,
that's the first nice thing you said to me on a podcast.
Hey, that's not true.
might be.